Facebook.com/The Mark Cox Show.
There were other immigrants who came here, and the bottom of slave ships worked even longer, even harder for less.
Uproar over the remarks prompted a clarification on the Armstrong-Williams show.
Whether you're legal or you're illegal, you come from the outside to inside, you're an immigrant. Slaves came here as involuntary immigrants, but they still had the strength to hold on.
So those were the comments that Ben Carson made, his very first official speech. And it's just like there were people waiting in the shadows to jump on him, waiting for him to make some mistake. And he referred to slaves as immigrants. I think in the strict definition of it, they certainly didn't come here willingly. But, for whatever reason, after generations, they stayed here. Are they not considered immigrants to this country?
No.
Not at all. Not in any respect.
Involuntary immigrants.
They're involuntary.
Yeah,
but still, if you move from one country to another, you basically immigrate or move from one country to another.
I know, but, usually when you think of immigration, you think of it's voluntary, where people decide to uproot themselves out of their home country and decide to come to America. And, it is the same thing. Africans came here, but it was just involuntary. So it's kind of not in the same category. And it almost it's almost insulting a little bit.
Okay. That's fine. I just
you're my boy and everything. So I don't want you to
I didn't. I just didn't think of it that way. I mean, if somebody's in this country, whatever reason they came here from, wherever they came from, they are an immigrant from that country. So I assume that if you call yourself an African American, I think it was all that.
What I believe is I make some good remarks. Rejecting the fact we're immigrants, but we came here as slaves, and he was trying to be not controversial, and it blew up and became controversial. I mean, he knows the difference, but he was just trying to tread so lightly of not mentioning slavery in his immigration comments, and he just kind of stepped all over it and just made a mistake.
Well, there'll be a little bit of a learning curve there because he's not a politician.
Yeah.
So
just stick with FHA and VHA mortgages and low income housing and things of that nature, and he'll do just fine.
There you go. I think you're right. All right. Tell you what I want to talk about right now is the fact that there is an effort underway in the state of Missouri to get rid of electronic voting machines. Because we know there have been some problems with them, and some people simply don't trust them. Some counties, I believe, it's like St. Charles County, don't have them at all. Everything's on the paper ballot out there.
Do you use them?
I have used them in the past. Okay. In this most recent election, I did not. I asked for a paper ballot. Frieda Keough is our guest right now with the Missouri Precinct Project, and I got to meet Frieda this past Saturday out at the rally there in Baldwin and was introduced to her by Chris Arps. Frieda, welcome into the show.
Well, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you. So you're working on this with Representative Paul Curtman, is that correct?
That's correct.
So tell me what was the genesis of this?
Well, there is a group of volunteers or citizens that have been working on this for a long time, 10 years to be exact, trying to get rid of the electronic voting machines because electronic voting machines can be hacked. Even though they're not connected to the internet, they can be hacked. And once you have a vote in the electronic voting machine, you can never look at it again. You don't know how you voted. You don't know if it recorded your vote correctly. It's just a big mystery. Well,
I've certainly read examples across the country of people complaining that a machine had changed their vote somehow, that they had voted for one person and the tape registered that they voted for somebody else. And every time that happens, somebody refers to it as a calibration problem.
Right. It happens all the time.
All we need to do is recalibrate.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, one of the former directors of the Board of Election actually told me that when women have long fingernails, they don't really touch the space where they should be touching it, but they're touching it around the space, and that causes calibration. That's one theory. But here's the real reason why votes are not recorded properly. If the machine is losing its power, they're all hooked up to an AC/DC outlet, and they have a battery in it, right?
Okay. Like a battery backup?
Yes. If the battery is low, the Board of Election knows that the machine potentially loses votes.
Wow.
So you have undervoting.
Well, I tell you, I've used the electronic voting machine once, and that was last election, 2012, because I went to the election board with my mom, and it was just so many people there that I didn't want to do the hassle, so I just did it. But I always ask for a paper ballot. I vote in U City, and U City is a Democratic bastion, and every time I go vote, they always automatically give me a Democratic ballot during the primary. So, Frieda, you said this has been around for the last 10 years. Isn't that about how long electronic voting machines have been out? So
about 10 years.
So does that mean that when these were first introduced, people were automatically against them, or was it because of problems?
You remember the 2000 Bush v. Gore voting fiasco?
Yes.
That's when the federal government stepped in and provided funds that would allow various counties to pay for the electronic voting machines. Everybody thought at the time electronic voting machines are the perfect method to vote. Well, in the meantime, we discovered it's really not that great to vote electronically. And various states, for instance, California, Florida, Ohio, they have pulled back from voting electronically because you cannot see your vote. You don't know how you voted. You don't know what the machine recorded. And because the machines lose vote when they are not on full battery power.
Frieda, since the Democrats are talking about the Russians hacked into our elections this last cycle, I'm sure there are probably 50 or 60 Democrats just lining up to support this bill and get it passed, right?
Oh, yes, there's lots of Democrats.
Are there really?
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
Boy,
that's good.
That joke fell flat, didn't it?
He's trying to be funny, Frieda.
Yeah, sorry.
The Russian so-called Russian hacking, you cannot hack into, you can hack into individual voting machines, but you cannot hack into the voting machines from offshore. That would take an awful lot of coordination.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that we always say, these machines are stored in church basements or wherever, school basements, for up to 2 weeks before the election. It would be very easy for somebody to go in there through the back door and manipulate that one machine, and it translates to all the other machines in the polling place because they're all hooked up together.
Yeah.
They're not on the internet, but they're hooked up together with a power outlet.
So what's been the pushback on this, Frieda? I have to ask. If it's been around, if the effort's been around for 10 years, and you've got somebody of the caliber of Paul Kurtman behind it, do you think you have enough votes to get it through this time, or is it still facing resistance?
I think we would have enough votes in the House to get it passed, but there's always a few people that will not let it go out of committee. For instance, last week we had a committee hearing in Elections Committee, and one guy, and he has supported our bill for the last 6 or 7 years, he added an amendment that's just a killer.
Huh. What was the amendment?
He claims that a county that has a maintenance contract with the machine manufacturer shouldn't be disenfranchised because we no longer use the machines.
What do you say to critics who say that electronic voting machines are the future and paper ballots and all that is 18th, 19th century technology and we're going backwards?
I totally disagree with you. Paper ballots is the only way you know how you voted. You can go back and check it. There is no way to know how you voted on the electronic voting machine. You cannot look at your vote. Not possible.
Frieda, is there a place people can go? Is there a website they can go to find out more about the effort?
Well, there is a Facebook page,
Okay.
Missouri's Coalition for Transparent and Secure Elections.
Okay.
And we get up to 20,000 hits on that thing. So people are engaged in it, but, they need to call their legislator and tell their legislator to vote for this thing.
That's a good point. And I hope people check it out and give you some support, because I like the idea, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be using a paper ballot from now on anyway.
Now, let me tell you one more thing.
Sure.
I'm from Germany. Germany was in the process of installing electronic voting machines. They did a live demo on television, and their Supreme Court stepped in and said, we will not use electronic voting machines because it is against your human right not to be able to see what you vote, how you voted.
Don't some of these, these electronic machines, don't they give you a paper receipt?
You can see that there's supposed to be a paper roll on some of them that record the vote, which is how some people found out. They looked up and realized it had changed the way they voted, but fixing it is a nightmare. And I don't know if it registers by name how you voted or not. But Frieda, thank you so much. I'm running out of time, but we'll get people to check out that Facebook page.
Yeah, the paper tape, you can't rely on it because many times it jams up and it prints over and over and over, so you don't know how you voted.
Yeah. Well, Frieda, thank you for your time.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, have a great day. Frieda Keough there with the Missouri Precinct Project. And call your state representative or your state senator. Let them know how you feel about that if you think it's important.
That's not very encouraging to hear that bad news about, it's not the voting, it's not tracking it and all this stuff.
They're just, there could be a variety of problems. I guess you could argue that, but the other way, the scanners have to work properly if you're going to vote on a paper ballot. But at least you don't have hanging chads. You don't have to poke those little chads. That's how we used to vote in Ohio when I lived there years ago. Chris Arps, thanks, my friend.
Thank you, Mark Cox.
Always a pleasure to see you. At